Friday, May 23rd. My name is Amy Wiltsey. I'm committee chair, and we have a quorum. I would entertain a motion to accept our minutes from April 25th, 2022. If we can please make the edit on that.
So moved.
Do I have a second? Second. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Thank you. Okay, tonight we have 3 budget transfers. I will read each one individually. The first proposed budget transfer number 1, proposed transfer is to adjust accounts in Object 111, 112 for various reasons such as resignations, maternity leaves, unpaid days, and overtime. Further details provided on the budget transfer and residual available balance will be moved to the salary reserve account. Total budget transfer is $113,253.97. Are there any questions regarding budget transfer number 1?
Are there any resignations during the year?
Yes.
Do you need a motion, Amy?
I'm just making sure Mr. Proto's question was answered. Yep, okay, I'll entertain a motion to approve the budget transfer number 1 as read.
So moved.
Do I have a second?
Second.
Thank you. And we'll do a roll call vote. Mr. Henrik?
Yes.
Ms. Bedell?
Yes.
Mr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mrs. Corcoran?
Yes.
Mrs. Carol Fabian?
Yes.
Mrs. Lance?
Yes.
Mr. Proto?
Yes.
Mr. David?
Yes.
And Ms. Cupie? She votes yes. And chair votes yes, unanimous. Thank you very much. Proposed budget transfer number 2 as read. Proposed transfers to assist a district with technology initiatives. Purchase of computers is to replace old failing computers and bring the high schools in line with each other. Funds from Object 400, 500, 600, and 730 will be used to purchase the needed items. The total budget transfer amount is $15,048.82. Are there any questions regarding budget transfer number 2? Mrs. Bedell?
Yes, through the chair. How were these line items selected for this particular transfer? What, I know there are different amounts from each line item, but just curious what's being selected.
It was a review of the IT budget done by the IT director, and he reviewed the accounts with me, assured me that he had utilized those accounts as they were intended. Some areas we ended up with better pricing, less need, so we had a small balance in each account, and he wanted to use them to offset what he needed in addition for computers.
So those, sorry, just following the question. So those objects 4, 5, 600, and 730 are all IT related items?
Correct.
Okay.
Okay, are there any other questions? We'll take a roll call vote. We'll start this way. Mrs. Lance?
Going to do a motion first?
We had a motion. Did we not? Oh,
That was on the first one.
okay, I'll entertain the motion. Mrs. Lance, thank you. Do I have a second? Mrs. Corcoran. Okay, roll call vote. Mrs. Lance?
Yes.
Mr. David?
Yes.
Mr. Proto?
Yes.
Mrs. Carol Fabian?
Yes.
Mrs. Corcoran?
Yes.
Mr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mrs. Bedell?
Yes.
Mr. Henrik?
Yes.
Mrs. Cupie? Ms. Cupie?
Yes.
Oh, and chair votes yes, thank you. And proposed budget transfer number 3, proposed transfer to cover a projected deficit in workers' compensation account. Utilize available balances from the general and auto insurance accounts. All accounts are within Object 590, and total budget transfer amount is $66,568.03.
Make a motion to approve. I'll second it.
Okay, any questions, discussion? Okay, we'll do a roll call vote once again. Mr. Henrik?
Yes.
Mrs. Bedell?
Yes.
Mr. Kennedy?
Yes.
Mrs. Corcoran? Yes. Mrs. Carol Fabian?
Yes.
Mrs. Lance?
Yes.
Mr. David?
Yes.
Mr. Proto? Ms. Cupie?
Yes.
And chair votes yes. Thank you very much. Okay, now we're on item B, financial reports. Mrs. Mangini.
Sure. Thank you very much for taking care of business with the transfers. As you review the financial statement that was in your packet, please be reminded that it is the April financial statement. And I'm happy to report, as I did note last month, that we're continuing to see an improvement in our year-end projections. Though special ed costs continue to increase, we are estimating a savings in the substitute and overtime accounts, salaries from unfilled positions and the corresponding savings to employer taxes, along with savings in dental insurance benefit line and the defined contribution pension account. We're also anticipating some transportation savings for field trips and other off-campus events that were postponed this year, as well as savings as previously reported in supply accounts and repair and maintenance accounts. Also, as we enter the last quarter of the fiscal year, we're able to better identify the available year-end account balances, and we have a clearer estimate of our utility costs. We are anticipating a deficit in the natural gas accounts. It was quite a cold winter, even though I don't think it was as stormy as usual, but it was definitely cold. But we are projecting an estimated savings in water and electricity, so I think we'll be okay within the utility accounts overall. Accordingly, as of April 30th, our projected year-end balance, is reflected on your report, is a deficit of $357,883. However, as noted, we're trending towards those accounts covering the deficit that has been our concern all year. Unfortunately, while this is good news for our finances, it's still reflective of our struggle to fill positions and secure substitutes. And that includes both building subs and our daily classroom subs. So we are actively exploring other options to secure subs as we look towards the new school year. And I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Mr. David?
Great segue, because my question this evening was on substitutes in the building. I think part of the problem is, if we look even statewide, we need to pay these substitutes more to get them in the building. Covering classrooms, collapsing classrooms, it's just not a good option for the students or for the building. Can you tell me a little bit what we're doing on that?
Yeah, I appreciate that input. Actually, Ms. Brown just recently provided Cabinet with her recommendations as far as taking a look at what we're paying subs. Also, do not forget that as the minimum wage continues to increase, we have to make certain we are at least matching the minimum wage. So we are taking a look at it. There is one area that we most definitely are leaning towards an increase, and those are our substitutes that are long-term for 40 days or more. We've done a study of comparable districts as well as some of our neighbors closest to us, and we are significantly low in that area. So we need to do what we need to do at this point to retain some quality people, and it is problematic in our schools right now, so we need to do all we can. So stay tuned, great input, and we certainly are looking into it.
I'm sure we'll be discussing more during the special budget.
Yeah.
Other questions for Mrs. Mangini? Mrs. Mangini, I just have one question.
Sure.
When we talk about savings due to lack of field trips and opportunities, is this still related to restrictions in COVID pandemic travel for our kids, or is it that we just haven't been able to?
I would say some of it was definitely with regard to restrictions earlier in the year. Now I think it's kind of a combination that perhaps some of the field trips that were planned, people simply aren't comfortable doing them at this time. But we've definitely gotten better. I think the school year has definitely looked a little more normal than it has over the past couple of years, but that is definitely part of it.
Most have to be booked in the fall.
Correct.
So that may have played a part in it. So it's not a savings we can anticipate in next year's.
Absolutely. Absolutely not.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions?
Just one quick question.
Mr. Henrik?
Under the legal expenses, about half that line item is spent, and the other half is encumbered. Why is that accounted for that way?
There's two things with legal. You'll see that there's two lines. One is for special ed, legal education, legal services, and the other is for regular education legal services. And when I arrived here, we didn't necessarily separate them in that way, and it's really important for state reporting that we report all our special education associated costs. We had encumbered the total amount for each. And at this point, we are tightening those up. We're a couple of months behind with getting our legal invoices. So we are tightening it up. This is through April, and I anticipate in May. I do not feel there will be a deficit between the two.
Thank you.
Mrs. Bedell?
The property transfer that we just voted on, the $113,000, is not included in this deficit number, correct?
That's correct.
Thank you.
Okay, are there any other questions for Mrs. Mangini? Great, thank you. Thank you, Mrs. Mangini.
Thank you.
Grants update, Dr. Clemmy.
Good evening. You should have the grant report in your packets. There are no additions this month, so we won't take long, but there is one change I wanted to discuss with you, and that is if you turn to the second page of the report, you'll see that the adult education grant, the amount decreased by $46,000, and I want to, in case you noticed that, I want to explain why it happened. The adult education grant works differently than any of our other grants. It's a complete reimbursement grant. We put the money out all year long, and then at the end of the year, the state reimburses us a percentage based on the economic conditions in the town you live in. So we get about 45% of it back. So the amount decreased by $46,000, which if you do the math means that the school board's contribution to adult education went down by about $30,000. And I put it in this month because it was just approved during this month. This is the only time you can do a revision to the adult education grant. So that's why it's been consistent up until this month and then suddenly changed. You just get to make one revision based on actual spending during the course of the year. And then, of course, when we're planning at the beginning of the year, we kind of plan for worst case scenario in terms of how much money we may have to put out, how many teachers we would need. And when the worst case scenario doesn't get realized, then we do a revision, lower the amount, lower the board costs, and lower the state's contribution. Any questions about that?
No question. I would just praise the program after being there at graduation last week.
Great, thank you. Two other items of news. One is just this morning, our fiscal year 23 IDEA grant was approved. We don't have a final number yet. When you do IDEA, you do it based on last year's numbers, and then the real numbers come in July, so I'll report that to you at the first opportunity after the summer. But the plan and the implementation and the budget categories were all approved by the state using last year's numbers, so we're good to go there. Secondly, we have received 2 grants, which are not on the sheet yet because they weren't received until the first week of May, but we've received 2 grants from the state's allocation of American Rescue Plan, or Arp Funds. And that was a competitive grant, and they are both for the same purpose. One's middle school, one's high school, for the expansion of our 21st century program. Now, it's a good deal of money. It's $450,000 combined. However, this is a great illustration of the limits some of these grants have. It's $450,000, runs through June of 2024, but we can only use it for 2 things. We must use it either A, to run the summer program that's a summer version of our 21st century after school program, which we're going to do in this summer and next summer, summer of 23. Or we can use the money to provide supports to allow special education students to participate more fully in the 21st century program, both during those summer sessions and during the school year 22-23. That's all we can do with it. If we don't use it that way, we have to give it back. So again, that's like I said, it's a great illustration of some of the limitations. We get a significant sum of money in here, but we can't move it around. Those are the only 2 things we're allowed to do. So that's the report for this month. Most of our time in the grants office is going into tidying everything up for the end of the fiscal year this year, making sure every penny gets spent. making sure it's all spent correctly and all accounted for correctly. We're looking at 2 or 3 grants to write over the summer, but mostly we're cleaning up right now. Any questions?
Yes, Dr. Clemmie, really quickly before Mr. David. You said the summer program or the expansion of special ed, and it's one or the other? It can't be both?
It can be both, and it's going to be both.
It can be. Okay, great.
Yes.
Thank you. Mr. David?
Yes, if I can go through the superintendent to Kevin and probably Heather as well. When you're envisioning this special education program, are you kind of thinking, I'll say from a view of 25,000 feet, a lot of the special education students already have ESY. There's usually a huge gap between ESY and the beginning of the school year. Help me here.
So
You see where I'm going with this?
I do. So I'll let Heather speak to the coordination of ESY and the program. I will tell you that currently the draft plan for this program has it running the second 2 weeks of July, which would mean some kids who would be in ESY and this program at the same time, or partially. The middle school program is going to run in the mornings, and the high school program is going to run in the afternoons. And the vision for this is to make students who couldn't normally participate in 21st century able to participate by providing additional supports. So for example, we have students in 21st century who have IEPs, but we don't at the moment have any students who need a special education teacher's attention during the afternoon sessions after school. We don't have behavioral technicians who can be with students, and that's what these funds can pay for. So students with, shall I say, harsher externalities that require further supports are going to be able to participate as a result of this.
More significant exceptionalities.
No.
Yeah. I guess my question is, would you be open to look at, we fall on this agrarian calendar here in the great state of Connecticut, where there's kids not going to school for 3 or 4 weeks, and they're losing some of those skills. With ESY ends, some of them don't qualify to go all the way through the August start date. Would you guys, with this grant, would that be something you would look into, you think?
If you're talking about having the program, say, in August,
Yeah.
That's difficult. The problem there is recruiting teachers.
Or staffing, it is. But also, you need the kids to have, regardless of whatever their needs are, you need them to have some kind of break before they come right back to school. But extending this program in ways that, the other programs might not satisfy for kids is definitely something that I think warrants further investigation.
No, I think it's a great program, and thank you for answering those questions.
Sure. Anything else?
Just one point, were there questions?
Yeah, when you're done.
One point of contention for that August, if that was a program model, would we look to does this grant allow you to partner with existing programs running in our district that are not Stratford Public Schools? I don't know the specifics of this grant.
So in theory, yes, and in fact, we will be partnering with Stratford Community Services, who's our partner during the school year as well. But in terms of bringing in other agencies, if they have a role to play within the design, sure. This was a competitive grant, so we can't change the design a lot, but adding a partner or an additional activity wouldn't be a problem.
Great, all right, thank you. Mr. Henner?
Yes, so a couple of questions. The Community Development Block Grant, it seems none of those funds have been encumbered to this point. Does that go towards the capital improvement plan, or?
The Community Development Block Grant is a grant to resurface and re-equip the playground at Franklin Elementary.
Okay, and that's in the works?
What's that?
That's in the works?
That's in the works, and this grant was awarded to us right at the beginning of COVID, and because of both supply chain issues and the ability to access the school during that COVID period, we haven't been able to do it. We are collecting updated bids. I think June 2nd it closes.
Okay. And then the same question, the School Violence Prevention Program?
Same thing. It's for security. It's for security blue lights and cameras, a new camera system, a security camera system at 2 schools. And again, it was awarded right on the cusp of COVID, and so it's all been delayed. The bids have gone out and been discussed, And our facilities director, Mr. Jerry, is right in the middle of finalizing those bids in that contract. In fact, I think he's meeting with them tomorrow.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions for Dr. Fleming? Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Okay, Ms. Borges, special education report.
Good evening, everyone. Not much has changed, so report is tracking just as we had said before. We are continuing to meet the ever-changing needs of our students and our staff that are working so diligently for our students with exceptionalities. We are tracking in a deficit in order to meet those needs. We continue to see a rise in mental health needs and supports that students need in order to be able to access their education. We are looking at that 21st century and how we can support our students better, and we might not be able to go into August, but we might be able to extend the day so that they have a longer day versus just a half day of ESY, so that we can accommodate both a need for the students to have a more complete program and getting enough staff to be able to produce the program successfully.
Any questions for Ms. Borges? Okay, thank you very much.
No problem.
Okay, and number 4, Mrs. Mangini, the food services report.
Yes, the food service report is for the month of March, as we're a couple of months behind as we work through each month's operating statement. You will see a deficit for $180,449, but once again, I'll bring your attention to the fact that our state reimbursements are a month or 2 behind, so we are actually looking at over $1.2 million in reimbursements. Obviously, we're doing very well this year. Part of that is we are operating under the Seamless Summer program, and that does give us a much higher reimbursement than our regular program reimbursement, and that is set to end on June 30th. It's something the federal government had offered through COVID. Nevertheless, I think we have positioned ourselves very well with some minor changes, working more closely with Sodexo over the last couple of years. I will tell you, however, as we get into April, we have less operating days and a lot of our expenses stay the same. Same thing with the month of June. So some of that, we won't see that exactly that kind of expenditure versus revenue with such a large balance for those months. But overall, it's been a really successful year for our food lunch program, and it's wonderful to be able to say that at long last.
Ms. Mangini, have you heard any feedback about the federal government not extending the waivers and the hardship it might pose on families?
There has definitely been discussion. As you all know, I am working through the food service management company RFP, which means I talk frequently to our colleagues at the State Department of Education, specifically those that are dealing with food service programs, and they are trying very hard to get extensions because I think most of us can agree with all that's going on through the economy. The needs of families are still there. It would be wonderful if we could continue it again for a year. Right now, I haven't heard anything positive, but I am trying to stay on top of it, so I will let you know.
Thank you. Are there any questions with regards to the food services report? Okay, thank you very much, and that will move us to enrollment status.
Enrollment. I do have something to share with you. Mr. Henrik had asked at the last meeting for the kindergarten enrollments year over year, so I am going to pass this around. I apologize. I should have put it at your seats ahead of time and just forgot. I'll just bring to your attention, which I'm sure you realize, but for the kindergarten enrollments for school year 22-23, obviously are just year to date. And it's my understanding, and from what I could see last year, that we do get a lot of additional registrations over the summer. But you can see, basically, we do average probably about 450 students each year for kindergarten. But obviously, you just received it, so if you do want to digest it and you have any questions on the information, please, you know where to find me. I'm happy to address them. Ms. Coopy, I think I had answered her question last month, but I will just confirm for her. She had asked about whether or not we have data that identifies enrollment by grade level and where the students are coming from, and I had said, yes, we do, and we most definitely do. It's voluminous, so if anybody is really interested in that information, maybe I can narrow it down if you can let me know specifically what it is you're looking for, if it's out of state, or whatever information. And overall, you'll see that the report is reflecting about 118 more students from last May. We do have a few less from last month. I know we've had a lot of requests. I think there's a lot of people moving in and out at the moment, but we've had a few requests from people who have moved over the last couple of weeks and just asked for permission for their student to remain through the end of the school year, which board policy does allow. So I just think there's a lot of movement overall.
Just a quick question. Looking at the enrollments for 21-22, our current school year, you show 460. What date are you using? So you're using as of this past week, 5/20?
I'm sorry, what are you looking, what I just handed out? Okay, just wanted to make sure we were on the same page. These would be October 1st numbers.
Okay.
Because that's what we have to report to the state, so those are usually the numbers that we use for all reports.
Yeah, because obviously our kindergarten enrollment as of May 2nd is, if I just take total enrollment, including out of district, is 27 students higher than that.
Yeah.
So I just want to know what the date was you were utilizing other than the 5/20 pre-enrollment for 22-23.
Yeah, no, you're absolutely right. I'm certain it is probably higher by the end of the year because we did have so many students moving in between September right through now.
So could I ask you to update this list and show what our October 1 kindergarten enrollment was for each of these years and our June 30th enrollment for that school year was?
I will work with our office. I think we can be able to provide that for
will
you.
give us a better idea of what our projection should be as we move forward, as we can see what our during the school year increases are.
Good point, absolutely.
Mrs. Bedell?
I was just gonna build on that for a second. Is this just the school enrollment, or does this include the outplacement services, all of that as well?
No, it is simply our in-school.
Simply in school?
Yes.
Okay. So that those numbers would be helpful. Thank you.
Mr. David? Same question?
Same question.
Any other questions regarding enrollment? Okay. Thank you, Mrs. Mangini. Is there any other business, old or new? Okay, then I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved, Madam Chair.
Second? Okay, meeting adjourned at 6:58. Thank you.